Hi guys, my name is Chloe, welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be talking about all of the books I read in May. Now May was another busy month for me, so I didn't actually get too much reading done, but most of the books that I did read actually looking back were quite chunky. So yeah, I did read a decent amount in the end. Overall, I read a total of 5 books, just about. It was going to be 4, but I managed to finish the last book I was reading last night, so I've now added that one into this wrap up as well. So the first book that I read in May was a FairyLoot book, and this was Spice Road by Maya Ibrahim, and this one was really interesting. It was a good fun read. I gave this one 4 stars. I thought it was a really good start to a fantasy series, and it's going to be really interesting to see where the story goes in the next book. So in this book we are following Amani, and she sets out on a journey to find her lost brother after a little bit of pressure from her younger sister to track him down, but she's not allowed to go alone. Members from the council back at home send a group with her, and this involves Tahar, who is someone that she doesn't really like. He's a bit of a jerk really, but he has to go because he's one of the war leader's sons, so he is sent on this mission as well to track down the lost brother. And then she also takes along a djinn called Kyan. I don't actually know if that's how his name's pronounced, I've only read it, but I'm going to say Kyan, and he is my favourite character by far. He's so mischievous and not evil. I definitely say morally grey, and he's, yeah, the most interesting character there, and she accidentally discovers him and then makes a pact with him to help track down her brother as well, so he's enrolled into this mission as well without the other guys knowing. So that's basically the setup for this story. I do really like the magic system in this world, so it is based on tea drinking, which is really interesting. Tea is one of my favourite drinks, so that was really cool, that the magic users have to drink this magical tea, and then that gives them a period of time in which to use their powers. Amani's powers are really interesting. She's able to wield different metals, so she does quite a lot of cool things with her iron dagger. I won't say too much about that because it is quite interesting to see how her magic develops throughout the book. And Tahar, who goes with her as well, is a beast seer, so he can control different animals, I think. He has a pet bird and he can send that bird scouting and things like that. So yeah, overall it was a really good time, and yeah, for a fantasy series first book I thought it was a really solid book. I would like to see more of Kyan. He's my favourite character, most interesting, so I'm hoping we'll see more of him in book 2 as well. One of the main reasons why I didn't give this book 5 stars is Tahar. His character just really frustrated me. There were moments throughout the book where I did like him and I started to feel sorry for him based on his backstory and things, but overall he was just a really big jerk and there was just no explanation for it really. I felt it wasn't justified enough, so that's the main reason why it didn't get 5 stars for me. I just also feel like we could have done with a little bit more world building, explaining the magic a bit more, and just expanded on this world, which should hopefully come in the next books in the series. So yeah, I'm probably going to continue with the series at some point. This is a FairyLoot copy. I don't know if I'd pay out for a FairyLoot copy, but we'll see. Yeah, I'm definitely interested to continue. So the next book I finished in May was a thriller, and this was This Lie Will Kill You by Chelsea Pitcher. This one was nice and short, and I took this one camping with me because I wanted a book that I could read throughout that holiday, but also this is secondhand and I don't like getting my books damaged, so so that's one of the reasons why I chose this book. But yeah, this one is a young adult thriller, and the premise of this book is basically someone died at a party a year ago, and then in the present day survivors from this, or the other people that attended this party, are invited to this house to compete in a competition, and they don't know that they've actually been recruited there by someone who wants to find out what happened on that night and possibly get some revenge as well. So yeah, it was really good. It's very short as well. It was only under 300 pages. I read it so quickly I couldn't put it down. It's very addictive, and I think that's a sign of a good thriller, is when you can't put it down and you want to find out what happens next. Because it is a YA thriller and full of, I think, high schoolers, it was kind of full of drama in places that it didn't need to be. So there were moments that just felt a bit fake. It's hard to explain, but just some things that were a little over the top. And the whole premise of this book and what happens in this book is very unbelievable, but if you can get past that, it's a really, really good book. And I don't think I've read a thriller that's been so beautifully written, especially the introduction to this book, like the prologue. It was just so beautifully described, just watching this house burn in flames and about the death and everything that was going on. It was probably one of the most beautiful things I've read recently, which is kind of weird when I say it out loud like that. But yeah, it was a thriller. Yeah, and I've never read one like this, which is good. And it does say on the front, for fans of One of Us is Lying, and I did manage to haul that one from a charity shop, so probably going to check that one out as well at some point. But yeah, overall it was a fun read, really, really fast. I would recommend it, especially if you want to jump into thrillers. Actually, it's not too complicated. But yeah, I also gave this one 4 stars. So the next book that I finished in May was a short story collection, and this was Ghosts of the Shadowhunter Market by Cassandra Clare and other authors. And yeah, it's a Shadowhunter book, of course. I loved it. I didn't know until I started reading this book that we were going to follow Jem Carstairs throughout various decades and follow him on his quest to find the lost Herondale. That was really, really interesting. So he was present in every story in this book, but each story had its own individual focus, which was really, really interesting. As always with the Shadowhunter books, I love going back and revisiting some of my favourite characters. That's probably one of my highlights, to be honest. And yeah, since this one centred around Jem as well, it was just an extra cherry on top. I absolutely loved it. It was a roller coaster ride full of emotions. I was laughing, I was angry, sad. There were some adorable moments in here as well, just everything. It was really, really, really good. And this book has excited me for the new Shadowhunter series coming out sometime in the future. No idea when it's going to come out, but yeah, the last couple in the stories really build up to what's going to happen next, but those books aren't out yet, so I'll just have to wait. But yeah, some of my favourite stories in this, so there were 10 short stories in here. 4 of them I think I really, really, really loved. The first one was Every Exquisite Thing, and in this one we are following Anna Lightwood and her discovering who she is as a person, and it's great seeing this. Her mum's really supportive, and it's her exploring her sexuality a bit more. That was really interesting, and we get to follow her as she ends up with Ariadne and what happens there. That was really interesting. The next story that I really liked was The Land I Lost, and in this one it was one of the longest stories in there, but my favourite parts in this was just seeing Alec and Magnus as dads and that dynamic at home and how they are when Alec goes away on missions and Magnus is just sending him little text messages and pictures of Max, their son. And yeah, just seeing Alec interact with kids and Magnus interact with kids, it was just so wholesome and so great. And Lily was great in this story as well. She really came through in this book, so I didn't really notice her too much when I was reading the main series, but in a couple of these short stories, she really came through. I really love her character, and she has a massive crush on Jem as well, and was always coming up with little nicknames for him, so that was just hilarious as well. The next one I liked was The Lost World. I can't say too much about this story because it does spoil the Dark Artifices, but it does directly follow on from the events of the last book, and we get to see the characters as they deal with some of the events that happened in that book. I can't say anymore, so that was great. And the other one that does happen after the Dark Artifices is Forever Fallen, and this is the one that really got me so excited for the new series because something that happened at the end of this book was explored more, and it really is starting to build up to something new, and I can't wait to see where it goes. So yeah, overall, the stories did vary throughout this, but just because of how much I love this world and the characters, I gave this one 5 stars overall. The next book I finished in May was a sequel, which is great. I always want to finish my series, and this was Legendary by Stephanie Garber. This is the sequel to Caraval, which I did read last month, and it was kind of a disappointment for me, quite an average read. I can report I did enjoy this one so much more. I gave Caraval 3.5 stars. This one gets a 4.5, so almost 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. In this one we do get to see Tella's POV, so it isn't told by Scarlet anymore, it's told by Tella, and I feel like she's a much more interesting character. I had so much more fun reading her POV. Yeah, I just had the best time. She's a little bit more mischievous, bit more risky. I absolutely loved it. Dante was in this one a lot more, and he was my favourite character from the previous book. I loved finding out more about him. That was absolutely amazing. And we had an introduction to a new character who I absolutely love as well, called Jax. And he is a really intriguing villain. I'm hoping we find out more about him in the next book, and I know he is featured in the newer books as well, so I'm so glad I love him in this. He was amazing as well. So yeah, and I really liked the romance too. I enjoyed the romance between Tella and Dante a lot more than I did with Scarlet and her love interest. Is he really that forgettable? Possibly. But yeah, overall I just had so much more fun reading this book, and I love jumping into this magical world again. The magical world was one of my favourite things of the first book, so I really enjoyed that. It just didn't give me 5-star feels, which is why I gave this one a 4.5, but I'm excited to finish the trilogy. And the last book that I read in May, one that I finished last night, I couldn't put it down, and this was In the Lives of Puppets by TJ Klune. And yeah, this is my favourite TJ Klune book that I've read so far. I've only read 3. Well, technically I've read 4, but I've forgotten what happens in The Extraordinaries and I want to reread that one. But yeah, this trumps House from the Cerulean Sea and Under the Whispering Door for me. It's a 5-star read. I think possibly my first 5-star TJ Klune. I absolutely fell in love with this book. I started reading it, and 40 pages in I had to go grab my tabs, because I don't tab every book, I just tab favourites or books that I know I'm going to want to go back to, so I had to grab them because I have a suspicion that this is going to be a 5-star book, and I was right, I absolutely loved it. So in this book we are following the android inventor Giovanni Lawson, and he is setting up his home in the woods just to get away from the big city, and one day he is approached by, I think, this woman, and she passes him her son and is like, take him, you need to look after him. And so he adopts this baby boy, and then we are following Giovanni and his son Victor as he's a young adult, so we do a time jump and we're just following them living their lives in the forest, and he's also taken up some of his father's inventor ways. He goes foraging in the scraps to look for new parts, and he also repaired 2 of his own robots, and they are Rambo and Nurse Ratched, and those 2 are my favourite characters. They are so hilarious and I love them both equally. So Rambo is kind of like a robot who's a vacuum cleaner. He has anxiety, he just wants to be loved. He's not brave at all and he just gets in the way, but I absolutely adore him. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum we've got Nurse Ratched. So yeah, she's an old hospital robot who was used to care for humans, and she is absolutely psychotic. She is a psychopath. She is so mean and cruel, but whilst loving these people in her family so much. It's so wholesome. I absolutely loved it and I fell in love with these characters. But yeah, we're basically getting to know them, following them, and then one day Victor comes across another android in the scraps and he decides to rescue him and repair him, and everything sort of goes wrong from there basically, and they have to go out on some kind of mission. That's all I will say. But yeah, the main strength of this book and why I adored it so much were the characters, especially Rambo and Nurse Ratched. I love them so much. All of their interactions were hilarious. I don't think a book has made me laugh more than this did, and it's mainly because of their interactions. They are so hilarious. I laughed out loud so many times. Yeah, most of my tabs are just funny moments. You can't see it over the gorgeous sprayed edges, but yeah, I loved it. And yeah, it was fantasy / sci-fi, cozy fantasy. Considering it's sci-fi and roboty, it wasn't hard to read at all. I don't read sci-fis, I do find them hard to read quite a lot of the time when I pick them up, so don't be put off by the fact that this is robots. It definitely feels more fantasy-esque, even though there are robots and things like that in this. Yeah, I would highly recommend it. If you love TJ Klune and you haven't picked this one up yet, definitely pick it up as soon as you can. If you haven't read TJ Klune but you want a place to start, I'd maybe recommend this one. I don't know why, but from the start it was just a lot more gripping from the start than any of his other books that I've read. Overall they've been great and the characters have been great, but these characters are so strong and they just grip you from the first few pages, and yeah, it's just incredible. It's a new favourite for sure, and yeah, I will probably reread it again at some point. I'm so disappointed that it wasn't longer, to be honest, because the plot was great, it was a good time, but I would just love more books of these characters just interacting on their day-to-day lives and them just being themselves, because that was one of my favourite things about this book and one of my favourite things to read. So yeah, 5-star read for sure, and I should probably stop rambling about this book so much. But yeah, it's a good sign when you have so much to say about a good book. Yeah, I loved it. So that was it. Those were all of the books that I read in May. Let me know down below if you've read any of these books and what did you think. I would love to know. But as always, I hope that you're enjoying your current read, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!